Hi everyone, this is Nadia and here's Jake. Babu boy, this is our Sidoni girl, and this is our buddy boy right here. And today we're here with another review. This time we're doing The Woman King. We watched on Netflix. It's trending #1. We haven't discussed it with each other, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say for that. And I'm excited to tell you what I have to say.
Please, yeah, I'm curious. What did you think?
I really liked it. Started crying for a couple scenes. Like at first, I won't lie, I was not as excited to see it because lately I've been not excited to see any movie that's past 2-hour mark. So it doesn't really have to do with movie. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna sit here for 2.5 hours. I just think that some movies are way too long. So when I watched it, I was pleasantly surprised. I was in tune with the film right away. It's a very emotional story. I didn't know that it was based on history. I think it's a very teachable lesson.
So that's the thing I need to talk to you about because I did some research about the history aspect and it's quite misleading, a lot of it. So we could talk about that in spoilers, but that's one thing I do want to mention in my opinion, because I mean, it does affect how I see the events in the film. And I mean, this sparked controversy because of the inaccuracies.
Okay. I think that is something that I'm like really excited to hear about as well. I was under the impression it was based on true story. So
see, that's the problem, is that when I see people talking positively about the film, like if they are raving about it, they usually say this is a
historical fiction.
No. They say this is an alternate timeline of the Dahomey tribe and the history of that. Problem is the movie doesn't make it seem at all like it's an alternate timeline. It kind of presents it as this is, just like any other sort of historical epic. Now, lots of historical epics and everything are completely misleading with their information. However, I do think that there's some crucial information regarding the themes of the movie that makes it come off as quite cynical.
I'm really interested to hear that, actually. Not knowing that.
But as a movie itself, I think we need to judge it as that first and foremost.
Yes, and as a movie itself, I thought that it was really touching. And it was the actors and actresses in the film were phenomenal. Viola Davis, especially, her performance is phenomenal in my opinion. Her emotional range just off the chart. She knows how to convey emotions without text. So even when she's not speaking, I really love how she's conveying the inner monologue that's going through her head, and it really makes it where I was feeling her emotions with her. Yeah, like I said, I cried a couple times, which honestly doesn't always happen in films lately. So I give this movie a solid 9.5 out of 10. What about you?
It was fine.
Yeah.
I do think like it definitely was interesting in a lot of ways, and some new perspectives were nice. But the problem for me was that I was really looking forward to more of the historical aspect and kind of seeing things from a new lens. However, this just felt so Hollywood. It was just very formulaic. Once we got into like, okay, we're doing the classic historical action adventure kind of thing, like it just wasn't very interesting to me at all. It felt extremely bland for the most part. I was really quite bored for a lot of it. There were definitely some interesting scenes and the acting was very good, but overall I just wasn't that impressed. I mean, it was fine. I mean, it just wasn't anything that kept me wanting to watch.
We watched this film like separately. Jake finished it and then I finished it just this morning. I do remember you saying this morning it was boring. I expected not to like it as much as I did. What would you rate it?
Saying either 5 or 6.
I expected that from like how you reacted off of it. Because I know when you really like a film, you're like, oh my God, I can't wait for you to watch it, honey. And then for this one, you were like, hey, honey, I finished it. You were like, oh, trying to stay neutral with your face, so.
The problem is the stuff that I liked, watching it felt sort of cheapened by the knowledge I gained actually looking up the historical stuff afterwards. So the stuff that I actually enjoyed wasn't as lasting as I thought it would be. The performances were good, but there were some just cliched stuff, very kind of like plot conveniences. The ultimate climax of the films felt a little bit, in the context of the historical events, very kind of hollow. In general, it was kind of paced like a Marvel film. It had the same
It's
kind of...
an action film.
Yeah, exactly. So it had the same kind of shot composition. The action wasn't anything super engaging for me. It was just fine. Like, there was nothing exceptional about it. It was very by the book.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a formula to this film, and I didn't mind it at all. I felt like it worked perfectly. perfectly, and I thought it was executed perfectly. Like I stated, like it really impacted me emotionally. This could be one of the top favorite films that I've watched this year thus far. You know,
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I just really, I didn't just like it. I loved it. Would you recommend watching it for others?
Yeah, I mean, I would give it a shot if it sounds like it's up your alley. If this being about a tribe of warrior women, you know, was very unique.
Yes,
I like that aspect.
Mm-hmm. So I will say I disagree a little bit. I do think that it comes across at the start as a tribe of women, but I think as the story unfolds, which I'll get into the spoiler section, it's really about a relationship. And
I didn't love that relationship.
I did, and when you actually uncover that, you realize like, okay, so every action that Viola Davis's character is doing is motivated by that. By saying that, can I go on to the spoiler section? Do you want to say anything else non-spoiler?
Relationship between Viola Davis and the young, warrior. I felt like it was interesting enough, but then they put in this twist that I thought was very kind of unnecessary. But yeah, spoilers.
Okay. Spoilers 3, 2, 1. I felt like it was completely necessary because
the shark tooth thing.
So Viola Davis, she was kidnapped and essayed, and really gruesomely, and then she ended up having a daughter that she ended up giving away. In the warrior group, helped give her away, and that's the daughter that ends up coming back and becoming one of the warriors. The way that she discovers this is that as a baby, Viola puts a little
shark tooth in her under her skin as a baby that stays there lodged in her skin. It just looks like a scar,
When they open the wound, it's there. I really like that. I felt like it was necessary because you could see like there's a scene where Viola is really you can tell she looks very much like she doesn't care about her own life. She doesn't mind getting hurt. Whom she doesn't know at the time is her daughter, who ends up helping her and saving her, very unleader-like. And she doesn't follow the rules, which is very unlike her because she's by the book of the warrior mentality and the plan and the team versus a single mindset. However, when it comes to this person, she's very much motivated to just destroy, revenge. And you don't really understand what that's like. You think it's because, and I think it is very motivated by her people and the destruction of her people by other people. You realize when it's clear that she had to give away her baby because of circumstances. You realize that she was motivated to destroy this person, especially because of what she was put through and because of what she had to give up. In the beginning of the film says, to her daughter, she says, before she knew it was her daughter, like, don't cry. We don't cry in here. Then you see Viola's emotions really unlocked, that she herself is really wounded and cries and really is hurt and really she's trying to shield herself from that pain by telling others to shield themselves from that pain. Really what happens is something really beautiful. Her daughter, once there's a realization that this is her daughter that she had to give up, who destiny ended up bringing back to her, she ends up being vulnerable. She ends up taking the risks. She ends up actually seeing a greater purpose in vulnerability. And I thought that was beautifully executed.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and give your spoiler thoughts about like when you were talking about history and
I thought that the execution of the relationship was fine. Like, again, the acting was what brought it out. I think there was some really good acting, but like the writing itself I thought was very predictable and expected. Not saying that having a predictable story doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Like, it can be done really well, and in a newish way that makes it feel fresh again. But I just felt like this didn't have, like, the story itself, the relationships didn't feel fresh enough for me to be all that excited by it. And, I could just kind of see where all of the arcs were going and where the expected resolutions were. One of the big issues that people had with this film was with the historical inaccuracies. So this is about the Dahomey kingdom in West Africa. Watching the film, you leave the film thinking that they're kind of reluctantly involved in the slave trade, but at the end they decide to be done with it because it's evil. The Dahomey tribe apparently was one of the most aggressive proponents of the slave trade and very involved in kidnapping people from other tribes, selling them in the slave trade. So the kingdom itself was involved in this. So the warriors would have been aware of this. And so it just comes very much like it's trying to apologize for this and trying to, it's like people say, it's like an alternate history
Timeline.
version.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the problem is if it is going to be like you're doing an alternate history version, I do think that people generally, need to know that like where it's diverting, from history in a sense. This movie, like you said, you weren't aware of like the history stuff. Like they continued doing the slave trade many years after the events of this movie, from what I saw.
What is like accurate?
What is accurate about the film? I have no idea. I mean, from what I can tell, it seems like it's mostly just kind of fantasy. I mean, there was the women
you can tell that a lot of it, right?
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of what felt most offensive and kind of cynical, what really annoyed me is like I really wish they did this story but showed like the difficult reality, that maybe the kingdom isn't just righteous, that there isn't just like a neat, clean way to solve the things there, and that it's a little more brutal. And I wish that they leaned into that brutality and showed like the pain of working within this system of Viola Davis wanting to be this warrior, but being upset about the consequences, of what they're participating in. It just felt very dishonest and very obnoxious and just so simplistic when it just came down to like, oh yeah, let's go free the slaves now, which is what we care about now.
Well, listening to it really feels like it's a superhero film.
That's what I'm saying.
Because
it feels like a Marvel movie.
Yeah, because like in part of the film in the beginning, it says like, oh, people think that the women warriors are like made of magic, and Viola's character says, no, it's no magic in here, it's just skills. But really, now thinking about it, it contradicts that, right? It kind of does seem like, okay, they conquered with their superhuman abilities. I don't mind that version. I mean, it's misleading, right?
And John Boyega as the king, as the end speech about how we're done being involved in the Europeans' evil, and where it paints a very misleading look.
I mean, I guess like it sounds like a wish list of what should have happened, the decisions that should have been made, but really weren't.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like trying to revisit that. But I do think it would be interesting if they explore the complexity in what was involved.
The thing is, I don't think it was intentionally revisionist. It didn't feel like we're trying to make a statement. This was bad. We're trying to like rewrite history, It just didn't have that kind of self-awareness. It seemed like it was just trying to be like, we care more about that this was a warrior tribe of women, and we need thematically things to fit together at the end of the movie in the Hollywood structure. It felt almost like, let's forget about this. People don't really know about this history anyways. Focus on Viola Davis and the warriors.
And then reimagine it.
And then and that just fit it into the Hollywood mold. And I feel like that's what it did. But I think your point, again, about how it kind of goes against when they say, like, it's not magic, it's skill and everything. But in the end, it does feel like magic. It feels very much like the
magic comes in the idea of mother's love, which is very classic. I think it's more so like mother's love is supposed to be magic. At least that's what we portray it as societally.
Can I say my problem though about the Viola Davis being the mother is that the whole movie is kind of like, and the whole great part of it is the found family stuff. Like the part is like you're rejected from your families, you don't belong. The point is that you are with all these misfits, all these other women who can band together for a purpose, and that's your family now. And the idea that, oh no, actually she just happens to be like some miracle of chance, she just happens to be her birth daughter, makes it more valid for her then to have like an emotional connection to her. So it felt inauthentic.
It would have been, I think, more powerful if it was she was an orphan that wasn't related to her.
Yeah.
And then she still had those mother instincts because, to your point, it is like a bunch of people who have had history and not the greatest history, not the greatest life, coming together, rejected in some ways, or choosing to reject some things in some ways, like coming together to be really there for each other as team. And it really, I think in the beginning, it was really trying to make the point, like just family's not always blood, and blood isn't always family. you know, because a lot of people, like, for example, fathers trying to sell their daughters, right? Or go into abusive situations. It's like they don't always have their best interests, you know. Granted, I know, like, not like the daughter was an orphan and not really related to the dad who like tried to sell her and such things, but it's definitely something that's portrayed a lot of times, is that like they're selling the girls as transaction. These warrior woman group, they represent something even higher than that, because in a society where women's shown as being transactional, I think there's a greater meaning, like women can do more. It is a little contradictory in that sense, right? Yeah, I do get what you're saying, I guess, now that I think about it, about the whole her being actually related to her. How it can kind of like oh, I blood is important, by the way. You know, no matter what, like nothing really goes through blood, right? Because when you really think about it, Viola's character to rescue her daughter, she put other girls at risk. I don't have anything else to say. Interesting points.
Do you hold to your rating?
Like, I think if I were just watching it the way it was, I wouldn't talk. No, it's an 8.5.
You don't have to change it.
No, I realize it's not as intriguing.
You can keep it.
No, Jake ruins movies for me. I love you.
Sorry.
Do you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you guys later. Let us know if you've seen it, and otherwise, let us know what else we should watch. We're definitely putting it on our watch list. So talk to you guys later.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.